Talosa, Amanai, Marsila Lima, Athanai. Good afternoon, Select Committee members. As Chair of the Mo Sitiseni 2003 and 2024, please hear my humble request. To you all, we extend our deepest regards and respect. The Samoan communities thank Te Anau Tuiono and his private members bill, and all the support thus far from the parties who supported the bill in the first reading. The restoring of the citizenship removed by the Citizenship Western Samoa Act of 1982 carries the intergenerational voices of Samoa and her people. Silenced by the abject shame and disgrace, by the undignified treatment and the dehumanizing effects of the New Zealand government's actions regarding the repeal of the Privy Council decision. The Mo speak in the spirit of fa'alualu, respect, and alofa, love. And we pray that our voices are heard in the same spirit. I've spent a lifetime of service to people of Auckland, New Zealand, and my Samoan communities in Samoa and here in New Zealand. In my capacities as a family mataia leader, a politician, councillor, a businessman, and a church elder. I've been called many things in my time in politics, but the reference as Samoa's unsung hero by Mr. Telefoni Ratslaff, the former Deputy Prime Minister of Samoa, is one which I treasure. I entered Parliament in 1996 as a list MP for National. I was drawn to the Lesar case, the Privy Council decision, and the Ensuring Citizen Act, Western Samoa 1982. In 1997, I started to investigate and research the decision. And in 1998, I had Dr. George Barton address the National Caucus in an effort to honour the Privy Council decision, and we worked together on this case. In 2003, I formed and led the Mo Sitiseni 2003 vision to pursue returning the Privy Council decision. On the 10th of March 2003, with the help and strong support of teams in New Zealand and Samoa, I and Dr. Barton, Patrick Downey, who resigned as the New Zealand Human Rights Commissioner over the New Zealand government's decision, led about 5,000 Samoans, among them hundreds of Matais, marched on the New Zealand Parliament with a petition of 100,000 signatures. A similar number marched onto the New Zealand High Commission office in Samoa. Today, I remember those elderly Samoans who prayed for the day when New Zealand government would deliver our rights. Longo Silao Lemana, who, like my father said, if you start this, you must finish it. No longer here. Over 95% of those elderly supporters who stood and sat in the rain during our rallies in Samoa in 2003. Those who sat in buses and travelling overnight to Wellington to support the submitting of our petition of 100,000 signatures, and who then climbed back on the buses to return to Auckland on the same day, the 10th of March 2003. No longer here. I hope and pray that their efforts will be rewarded by your decision today and the ongoing journey of our Mo Sitiseni submission. The untimely passing of George Barton in 2011 prevented me from achieving my greatest goal. Furthermore, it has now been revealed that the 2001 Samoa census recorded that the Privy Council cohort numbered 20,000 Samoans. Today's census recorded less than 3,500 alive today. Fast forward, we have now, and what the Mau Sitiseni 2024 is presenting now, is a remarkable opportunity for your committee and the government to right this wrong and to make our 21-year Mau Sitiseni vision a reality. You have before you the Mau Sitiseni case in full. It is expertly researched and crafted, and the Mau Sitiseni 2024 are confident that our submission contains the way forward in New Zealand-Samoa relations. We are also confident that your committee will do the right thing and do justice to those 16,500 deceased Samoans and their descendants who were wrongly deprived of their New Zealand citizenship. By doing so, you would be honouring the intergenerational voices of those who were traumatised by the injustice of the government's actions in repealing the Privy Council decision, the Dawn Raids, the assassination of Tupua Tamasese Leolofi Ahana III, the flu epidemic. But more importantly, it will build trust in New Zealand regimes of the future. Moreover, it will ensure that yet another incidence of state-sanctioned racism against Samoa and her people will never happen again. Please listen to the wisdom of our former Prime Minister, Helen Clark, when she said, "Slow down, listen, think the thing through before New Zealand adds another sorry chapter to its sordid history of dealings with Western Samoa and her people." The actions of this committee and the government and what the Samoan Sitiseni are calling for will go a long way in addressing Samoa's unfinished business with New Zealand. Please consider these numbers as you deliberate. Total migrant arrivals into New Zealand in April 24, 154,900. India, 48,000. Philippines, 30,300. China, 27,500. We are asking you to honour the Privy Council decision today, representing 15,000 people, diminishing daily with the youngest age 62. And before you ask the question, I'm going to answer it for you. The Privy Council decision said, those born between 1924 and 49 are British subjects, and on the 1st of January 1949 were New Zealand citizens, and so were all their heirs, and that's what we want. The Privy Council decision in 1982. The Muldoon government feared 100,000 Samoas could enter overnight, and the economic impact will create in New Zealand. 2024, 42 years later, 15,000 people, and the argument is still the economic effect it will have on New Zealand today. Get real, wake up, get the facts right, and get this right now.
Yes.
National government is borrowing billions of dollars to fund tax cuts. Don't keep us waiting. The video tells your story. With all due respect, may I humbly ask in advance for your tolerance with our given time. You've read our submission, and I'm sure aware of the huge time that has gone into research and writing these papers. The submitters look forward to answering any questions you may have, and I hope you have some. Our last three submitters are experts in their field and were physically part of what happened. Maiava Iulai Toma, former secretary to the Western Samoan government in 1982, and travelled with Prime Minister Va'ai for the meeting with the New Zealand Prime Minister, Rob Muldoon. Dr. Melanie Anae, who was one of the Polynesian Panthers on the ground during the Dawn Raid saga. Luamanuvao Katalaina Sapolu, barrister and consultant, a Bachelor of Law from Auckland University, admitted to the bar in 1986 and practiced in New Zealand between 1986 and 1988. A master's degree from the Queen Mary University in London. From 2002 to 2019, held senior legal positions in the Commonwealth Secretariat in London, including Director of the Governance and Peace Directorate. From 2012 to 2013, the Chief Legal Counsel of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group of State in Brussels, Belgium. 2021 to 23, the Ombudsman of the Government of Samoa. I sincerely hope their presentations will make you feel the pain that we have endured. Tamasese's dying message to his people: my blood has been spilled for Samoa. I'm proud to give it. Do not dream of avenging it, as it was spilt in peace. If I die, peace must be maintained at any price. Let's honor Tamasese's words in peace. It is time to correct the errors of the past 42 years and move forward together with respect, humility, and dignity. And with that, I'll invite Maiava Toma.
Thank you, Anae. Madam Chairperson, honorable members of the committee. My name is Maiava Iulai Toma. I was Secretary to Government in Samoa at the time of the Palmailasa Privy Council decision. Thank you for the opportunity to address you from the perspective of the Samoan government in 1982. With respect, honorable members of the committee, the Privy Council ruling from Samoa's perspective in 1982 meant simply that a whole bunch of people, then scattered throughout the world, were citizens of both Samoa and New Zealand, not from anything of their own doing, but by operation of the laws of the two countries. Samoa's Prime Minister, Vai Kolone, came to Wellington to say to New Zealand leadership that Samoa did not have an issue with this. He asked his counterpart to simply let things be. I was with the Prime Minister on his short visit. New Zealand, however, saw problems. They believed Samoans would swarm into New Zealand to the detriment of both Samoa and New Zealand. Samoa didn't think this would happen and would have explored ways to counter it. It was not lost on Samoa that the Cook Islands, Niue, and Tokelau, whose entire populations enjoyed New Zealand's citizenship, did not appear harmed or disadvantaged by the endowment. The New Zealand Prime Minister told Vai that the mood in New Zealand was clearly against letting the Privy Council decision stand, that there was political resolve to legislate against it, that there was no going back from that resolve. Mr. Muldoon was courteous and very frank about the implications of doing nothing. The issue had potential to generate a lot of emotion in New Zealand, and he was very mindful of propensity in politics to play on that factor in future electioneering. The Privy Council ruling will not be allowed to stand. Samoa had hoped for the opposite, which would have been pleasant sequence to then very recent unpleasant experience. Prior to 1982, Samoans had been welcomed into the labor force New Zealand needed to have in the boom years of the 60s and 70s. Many overstayed their visas as no great pressure was put on them to leave. The treatment of overstayers changed dramatically in the late 70s, when they were no longer important to the economy. Among those harassed and humiliated, very likely were many who were dual citizens all along, according to the Privy Council. As Samoans, these people were shabbily treated. As New Zealanders, they were shunned and would eventually be disowned. The Samoan Prime Minister, seeing that rejection of the request he had come to make had been a foregone conclusion, headed home. Very sad. Days later, Samoa was asked to receive a ministerial visit on immigration, something New Zealand could request at any time under the Treaty of Friendship signed on Samoa's independence. That treaty speaks of an established, quote, specially intimate relationship, unquote. But nothing in New Zealand policy on access into New Zealand had shown the relationship to be either special or intimate. Now, 2 decades after independence, and after a bombshell Privy Council ruling, New Zealand wanted to propose an immigration protocol to the Treaty of Friendship. Lack of enthusiasm at the highest level towards New Zealand's request for a protocol was uncharacteristic of Samoa. It was sheer reaction to New Zealand's unwillingness to accommodate the Privy Council ruling. Michael One was firm in his view that the New Zealand citizenship of any Samoan person was the sovereign business and responsibility of New Zealand and out of range of Samoa. New Zealand had already determined the course it would take. His own government's responsibility lay in securing entitlements for all Samoans. The New Zealand proposal set out, the New Zealand protocol proposals set out policy New Zealand wished to implement to benefit Samoans with respect to residents in New Zealand. It introduced treatment for Samoan migrants that was not open to others. This was immediate eligibility for New Zealand citizenship on arrival in New Zealand. But I prevailed on his ministerial colleagues to proceed with the protocol in the spirit of the Treaty of Friendship. It is now many, many years since the events of 1982 and the decisions formed in the circumstances of that time, decisions which left many people sorely disappointed, some resentful. I myself was deprived of citizenship by New Zealand's 1982 Act. I felt then, as I do now, that citizenship accruing unsolicited to an individual should be inviolable, except for cause attributable to the individual himself or herself. I truly believe that had the Privy Council ruling been allowed to stand, life would have proceeded without any great drama in either New Zealand or Samoa. There would have arisen a noticeably higher flow of people to and fro between the two countries. With the greatest respect, I urge New Zealand lawmakers to choose this time to act with generosity in the manner they were not sufficiently bold to do in 1982. I pray New Zealand to be good enough to implement whatever might be possible to do now to benefit the beneficiaries of the negated Privy Council ruling who are still alive. Doing the right thing by people is a sacred duty of democratic leadership. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just note we've got 18 minutes left and there are three of us that will need to go at 5 o'clock. And once that happens, we won't be able to conduct the select committee because we won't have a quorum. So can I just note, can people please, if you do want us to engage and ask questions, we will need some shorter submissions. It's fine if we don't have time for questions, but that's your call. But I do need to just be very clear that at 5 o'clock, that is the end of the time. And
10-minute presentation.
We've got 17 minutes and we've had 45 minutes for the whole group. So I just need to make that. I did say that at the beginning of the presentation and I'm going to have to hold firm on that. So thank you.
Greetings. I will take my written Polynesian Panther Party Legacy Trust submission, which was titled Samoa and Her People's Unfinished Business with New Zealand, which has been submitted in support of and in conjunction with the Maiava Iulai Toma 2024 group presented this afternoon as read. I humbly ask that this historical narrative be digested in conjunction with the exquisite legislative narrative written by our colleague Luamanuvao Katalaina Sapolu with Thomas Swaliki, whose oral submission follows mine today. I am a daughter of the pioneer generation of Samoan settlers who came to New Zealand in the early 1940s. We, their children, were the first of the first generation of New Zealand-born Samoans born in the 1950s. I'm also an original member of the Polynesian Panther Party in the 70s and today the chair of the Polynesian Panther Party Legacy Trust. Samoa and her peoples have a lot of unfinished business with New Zealand regimes of government. And this is all laid out in the socio-political and historical chronological facts, which I provided in our Polynesian Party Legacy Trust submission. What really hurts me in the sad tale of Samoan intergenerational harm and trauma is that in over 100 years, under New Zealand administration, no one listened. In 1918, when the Talahuni was allowed to land in Samoa, despite knowledge of the Spanish influence on board, despite offers of help from the American governor, no one listened. Approximately 8,500 people, 22% of the Samoan population died. Our social and political structure was decimated by the deaths of almost 90% of our Makai. Responsibility for this pandemic clearly lay with New Zealand. 2 years later, 1920, the League of Nations granted New Zealand mandate over Western Samoa, and in opposition, the Maiava Samoa, which was spawned from Mauaki's Maiava Iulai in 1908, called for Samoa more Samoa, the return of self-governance and independence from the New Zealand administration. No one listened. Instead, our Māori leaders were punished, imprisoned, banished, and killed. More Samoans died. In 1962, 33 years later, our call for independence and self-government was heard. Samoa was the first Pacific nation to gain independence, and it was celebrated with pride. Samoa more Samoa became a reality. A treaty of friendship was signed on the 1st of August. It emphasised, quote, friendship, confidence, and a mutual endeavour to obtain for Samoan peoples fuller opportunities for social progress. But the euphoria was short-lived. A little more than 10 years later, the houses of Samoans in New Zealand were being dawn raided, and our people were being random checked. The lack of trust and confidence in New Zealand government experienced by our Samoan settler parents in Samoa had followed them to New Zealand, and now was instilled in the lived experiences of a new generation, their New Zealand-born children. 3 years prior to the dawn raids, the Polynesian Panther Party, then aged 16 and 17 years old, had sprung into action against the blatant racism by both the Labour and national governments, police and immigration officials. In the Polynesian Panthers' call for social justice and a stop to the intergenerational harm and trauma against Pacific peoples in Auckland, no one listened. more Samoans were harmed. Fast forward to 2021, on the occasion of our 50th anniversary, the Panthers instigated the need for an apology. It was time for our people to heal. After our lobbying on 1st of August, 59 years after, on the exact date of the signing of the Treaty of Friendship, Jacinda Ardern apologised. I had 2 minutes. Okay. I will just shorten that, but you get the drift, and you get the pattern of the harm inflicted on our people. I'll just finish with this last thing. On behalf of the Opposition Cancer Party, we now ask that you advise the House that repealing the Citizenship Western Samoa Act 1982 is the correct and right course of action. Seize the time.
I apologise to Govt Anae what she had to do, but unfortunately, Luamanuvao has travelled a long way to present to you. And it's sad if she can't get a message and I better shut up and pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Luamanuvao Katalaina Sapolu, and I speak on behalf of the submission for the Mau Sitiseni Samoa 2024. I'd like to confirm that the Mau supports the bill. The thrust of the submission is to do justice to those from whom New Zealand citizenship was removed in 1982. At the first reading of the bill, the Honourable Cameron Brewer said, "All's been said and done. There's nothing more to be said. Various governments of colours and stripes have looked at this matter and there's nothing more to be done." With the greatest of respect, we disagree. Yes, as the report of the committee who dealt with the petition in 2003 and 2004 reported, it reflected the advice and the position of the government in regards the 1982 Citizenship Western Samoa Act. We used and read and assessed the same laws, but we arrived at a different conclusion, a conclusion which in our respectful submission will do justice to the Samoans. A conclusion which does not, with the greatest of respect, grasp at straws in saying that it was due to inefficient drafting that the laws, the 1923 British Nationality and Status of Aliens in New Zealand Act and the 1928 Act did not reflect the intent of Parliament. With the greatest of respect, there was nothing wrong with the drafting. The laws reflected the intent of Parliament and the collective wisdom of Parliament in those two legislations. I would invite the committee to follow the legislative framework that New Zealand put in place, whereby it was arrived at in 1948, the 1948 British Nationality and New Zealand Citizenship Act, where New Zealand introduced its own citizenship and therefore created New Zealand citizens of those British subjects who were born in Western Samoa. So in summary of that group of people who were born on the 13th or after of May 1924 and before the 1st of January 1949, they were British subjects. By New Zealand's Act of 1948, they became New Zealand citizens. Now I'd like to touch on the issue of descendant, because I have noticed from many of the speakers who were before me that the questions were on the status of descendants. I'd like to point out to the committee that the 1982 had 5 classes of people from whom citizenship was removed. The 5th of that class was the class of descendants. But what the Act omitted to do was to give a cut-off date of their eligibility to citizenship by descent. So let me take the committee to the 1977 New Zealand Citizenship Act. Under that Act, the transitional provisions continued New Zealand citizenship for those who were British subjects, as well as the descendants. But for those descendants who were born outside of New Zealand, after the 1st of 1949, those were the descendants, they claim New Zealand citizenship through their father. But so long as they, the descendant, or the father was born within a mandated territory or a trust territory. That is how we arrive at the cutoff date of the 1st of January 1962, because that is when Samoa ceased to become a trust territory under the United Nations trusteeship scheme. So we have given you the appendix on how we arrived at the figure of those who were born on or after the 13th of March 1924 and before the 1st of January 1949. And those who were born after the 1st of January 1949, but before the 1st of August 1962. Our figure is 15,305. Now, the source, we invite the committee to recognize that the source we have given and used is an independent source. We did seek figures from the Samoa Statistics Bureau, but we have used the figures which are provided by the World Bank and the United Nations, and I would like to submit that they are independent, objective figures, which also use the Samoa Statistics Bureau figures as sources. But because the last census in Samoa was in 2021, there would be a variance. We also do not have the detail of the information to distinguish within the classes of those born after 1949, but before 1962, who will be able to claim entitlement to citizenship through their fathers. So the final figure would inevitably be lower, as none of those people could claim through their mothers. And further, because of this special group of people for whom the New Zealand legislation provided for their nationality and their citizenship, no other descendant can claim citizenship through the entitlement of a British subject. So I have heard questions being asked. Our respectful submission to you, the committee, is the figure we have given you is the ballpark figure, but it could reduce. And I really would like to ask the committee to focus on those dates because they are important. This is a special class of people. I would like to also point out to the committee that we did file a supplementary submission, and that through working through the legislations of New Zealand, we have submitted that there were people within the class of persons from whom citizenship was removed who had only one citizenship or one nationality, and that was a New Zealand nationality. So the risk was very, very high that of that class, there were people who ended up without a nationality, stateless. So that in our submission, New Zealand had violated international human rights law. To underscore that point, I will ask the committee to work backwards on the legislation. There was a question or a comment by the ACT representative at the first reading that Samoans chose to become Samoan citizens and independent. It's not an accurate statement. The Citizenship of Western Samoa Ordinance 1959 remained the law in Samoa on citizenship until 1972. So in spite of what our forefathers would have said and claimed during the Constituent Assembly that they want Samoan citizenship, the law did not go along with that desire. It remained the law until 1972, and that act was repealed in 2004. Madam Chair, I'd like to conclude by saying this, and it's a question that's often heard. If not us, who? If not now, when? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. And can I just assure all of you that your written submissions have been received by the committee and will be read. And if you do wish to provide copies of what you've presented today, you can do so to the clerk, and that will also be shared around the committee. Just some final comments from me, and then I will ask Kopito just to very briefly lead us in a closing prayer. I think that's appropriate. Can I just acknowledge everybody from the community across the two subcommittees today who have submitted today. I can assure you that the committee has listened very carefully to all of the submissions, and I want to acknowledge those of you who have shared deeply personal stories of hurt and trauma over many decades, acknowledging that is a difficult thing to do. And I want to, assure you that the committee has heard you with the respect that you deserve. So thank you from myself as chair. It has been a very full and useful day for us as we consider the bill and go forward with our deliberations. So I'll just pass to Kopito, and then we will need to quickly move out.
On behalf of all of our Samoan community and those who have submitted, let us give our thanks to the committee. Then I'll ask Reverend Victor to conclude us, mindful that we've got a minute before these MPs go. Let us close with a word of prayer. Umana matou whaia se mea le tuai. Matou te toi fo ia tu lava I la ratia o whaalia o matou nganga o whaafitai ma whaamanu. Nei tu la fiafi. O mai alo matou whaamoe. La lea o matou. Toi fo ia tu ia tu whai tōro no whai pa ia whaafo le vi inga ma whaafitai. Whaafitai o nao soi fua au na ia. O e na filifilia mai le Parliament o New Zealand. Te I latu whaafoina le nei whaamoe ma nei tau mwhaina. Whaafitai o nao soi fua le lei ma le malosi o lo latu maua. Ia baise foi o le nau o whaafonga. A o mātou talano atu ia I latu. O le tatalo le li e, I so soani la o fio ia I latu. A vatu lo si la fia le lei, ma le mala ma le lei. I o lātou nganga ma o lātou mawhauwhau. A o lātou tala noa, ma sa ili ati. Na I mwhai o na maua, se tali o lo o mātou nau iai. A vaenga uma ia vi iai la o fio whaamanuia ia I lātou. Mātou o le talo fo le li ia pe o na mātou tau whai ia o na uma nei. Lawa whainga lunga tofi wharitua mali tō tele lava le lau a whaka. Wala watu. Moni ua iu manuia le wha moe le nea fiafi. Ai nei umala mātou ngā luen. O le talo le li ia mātou o ni sai wha talitali mali tō file mu. A mailo file mu ia te mātou te wha talitali ai. Ai abatu I lau fia o mātou ti ngā. Pe o hana na tangi atu ia te oe mali loto tinga. E ifia maua si tamaititi na te sapa sapai I ona lima. Ma pese ai le loto fia fa pe na o mātou na ngona le li e. Ia tali mai wha mole tama ia I mātou. Ia o mai si tali mātou te fia ia. E tamaititi e o lo mātou fia mau. Mātou te sapai ma mātou loto te tele ai. Wha manuia mai. Mai e wha mānalu mai I mātou. A mātou te ape. Ia mātou lunga. E loko marifile mo lau fio le atua tama. Le atua le alo ma le atua le ngā nisari nea fiafi mātai au se I o le whaababau la. Amen.